Every night she'd turn her back to me, phone in hand, a quiet smile playing on her lips. I used to think it was just work stress, or maybe scrolling through silly memes. I was wrong. That soft, private glow became the cruelest light in our bedroom, pushing me further away with each passing night. It wasn't just the light, though. It was the way her shoulders would slump slightly. A quiet sigh escaping her as she finally set the phone down, often hours after I'd given up trying to sleep or even trying to reach for her. Then she would just drift off. My wife, Sarah, and I had been together for 12 years, married for 8. We built a good life, a comfortable house, and what I thought was a solid foundation of trust and affection. We didn't have kids, which meant more time for us, more trips, more spontaneous evenings. Or so it used to be. The change started subtly, maybe 6 or 8 months ago. It wasn't a sudden shift, but a slow, creeping chill. Intimacy, which had always been a natural and warm part of our relationship, began to dwindle. At first it was, "I'm tired, honey," or "a long day at work." I understood. We both had demanding jobs. I manage a mid-sized IT department, and she's a marketing director. Our schedules could be brutal. But then, the tired excuse started to feel less like a reason and more like a barrier. I'd try to initiate, gently, a touch, a kiss, and she'd stiffen almost imperceptibly. Her responses became automatic, almost rehearsed. "Oh, honey, not tonight. My head is just spinning from those deadlines." She'd roll over, her back to me, and that's when the phone would come out. I'd lie there, listening to the almost silent tapping, occasionally seeing the flicker of an image reflected on the wall. Sometimes, I'd hear a soft chuckle, a sound that rarely made it to my ears anymore, even when I told a joke. It was a private sound, a moment of joy that wasn't shared with me. I remember wondering, more than once, what could be so entertaining on a phone at 1 a.m. that it warranted that kind of quiet delight. I tried to talk to her about it. Not directly about the phone at first, but about us. I asked if she felt distant, if something was bothering her. I suggested we try to make more time for each other, maybe a regular date night, or even just leaving work at the office. She'd always reassure me, say I was overthinking things, that she loved me, and that it was just the stress of her new project. She even started talking about how much she hated work, how it was consuming her. Her explanation made sense on the surface. Her role had become more demanding lately. I saw her bringing work home, taking calls late at night. I didn't want to be the insensitive husband who complained about her career ambition. So I tried to be supportive. I cooked dinner more often, took on more chores, tried to create a calmer home environment for her. I hoped that if I eased her burden, she would relax, and we would find our way back to each other. It didn't work. If anything, the phone time increased. She started taking it with her everywhere. Not just to bed, but to the bathroom, even when she went to get a glass of water in the middle of the night. It felt like an extension of her, a precious, fragile thing she couldn't bear to be separated from. She used to leave it on the kitchen counter, or charging in the living room. Now, it was always within arm's reach. I tried to push past my growing unease. I told myself it was my own insecurity, my own male ego feeling neglected. I was getting older, maybe I wasn't as exciting as I used to be, maybe the spark had just faded, as it does in many long-term marriages. I even blamed myself for not being persistent enough, for not being able to woo her back from her digital world. One evening, I came home a little early. Sarah wasn't expecting me. I walked into the house, and she was in the living room, sitting on the couch, her back to the door. She was fully absorbed, scrolling on her phone, and she had that smile again. That quiet, contented smile. It vanished the second she heard me. She almost jumped, quickly putting the phone face down beside her and turning to face me with a forced cheerfulness. "Hey, honey, you're home early," she said, a little too brightly. She always sounded more natural than that. "Yeah, finished up that report," I replied, trying to gauge her reaction. It felt like she had been caught doing something wrong, but what, scrolling through Instagram? "Oh good, I was just catching up on some news articles. This election stuff is wild, right?" she offered, picking up the remote and turning on the TV. almost as if to fill the silence and provide a distraction. That night stuck with me, the way her smile evaporated, the way she hid the phone, the slightly panicked tone in her voice, and the overly quick explanation. It was out of character for her, even with her recent phone habits. Sarah had always been open, almost transparent, about her thoughts and feelings. Now there was this new guardedness, a flicker of something she didn't want me to see. I started paying closer attention. The phone was almost always on silent, but I'd occasionally hear a faint vibration from her side of the bed. She'd grab it instantly, sometimes even before the vibration stopped, as if she was expecting it. She also started going to bed earlier, often saying she was exhausted, only for me to find her hours later, still awake, bathed in the soft glow of her screen. I felt a growing chasm between us. It was a silent, invisible wedge driven by a small, sleek device. I missed her laugh, her touch, her undivided attention. I missed the way she used to fall asleep curled against me. Now, the only thing she seemed to cuddle was that phone. One Friday she told me she was going out with her friend Lisa. They had a standing once-a-month dinner, and I usually didn't think twice about it. But this time, she was dressed a little differently, a new top, her hair styled more carefully than usual for a casual dinner. She looked great, and I told her so. She just gave me a quick, almost distracted thank you. She left her phone charging on the kitchen counter by mistake. It was the first time in weeks I'd seen it unattended. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew it was wrong to look, but a desperate curiosity, a need for answers, clawed at me. I stood there, staring at the black screen, feeling like a thief in my own home. I told myself to leave it, to trust her, to not become that kind of husband. I managed to walk away. She called me an hour later, asking if I could bring her phone to the restaurant. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot it. Can you be a sweetheart and bring it over? Lisa is already here, and I'm bored without it." I told her I would. I picked it up, feeling its weight in my hand, and drove it over. When I handed it to her, she barely looked at me, just grabbed it, swiped it open, and immediately started typing, that small, private smile back on her face. It wasn't Lisa she was texting. Lisa was still putting her coat on in the entryway, looking a bit confused about why Sarah was so engrossed in her phone already. I saw it, just a quick glimpse as she turned, but the recipient wasn't Lisa's name on the screen. It was a name I didn't recognize. And the message, a snippet, just 2 words. But they burned themselves into my memory. On my way. My stomach dropped. I tried to tell myself it was a coworker, a client, someone innocent. But the feeling, the knot in my gut, told me otherwise. The smile, the guardedness, the forgotten phone, the lie. It all clicked into place, forming a terrifying new picture. The image of Sarah's phone screen, lit up with those 2 words and an unfamiliar name, replayed in my mind like a broken record. On my way. It had been so quick, just a flicker, but the imprint was indelible. Lisa had barely registered Sarah's sudden absorption, just grabbed her coat and said goodnight, oblivious. Sarah had responded with a breezy, absent-minded wave, her attention already elsewhere. I watched her retreat into the bedroom, phone clutched tight, and a cold dread settled deep in my stomach. The knot from before tightened, transforming into something sharper, more defined. I tried to tell myself it meant nothing. Perhaps it was a project manager, a new client, someone she was meeting about work, even on a Friday night after dinner with friends. But the furtive glance she'd given me, the way she'd quickly angled the screen away, that wasn't professional. That was secret. And the smile, that private, knowing smile, was still there. It wasn't the tired, stressed smile of a marketing director burned out by deadlines. It was something else entirely. It was intimate. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the sheets as Sarah shifted beside me, felt amplified. I found myself listening, really listening, for the first time in months. Her breathing was even, her phone silent beside her. She had probably texted him from the living room, or while I was in the kitchen. The thought made my skin crawl. We lay in the dark, separated by the chasm of her unspoken communications, and the unspoken fear that had now taken root in my chest. The next few days were a blur of forced normalcy. I went to work, managed my team, and tried to focus, but a part of my brain was constantly running diagnostics on Sarah. Every interaction, every nuance, was filtered through this new chilling lens. When she looked at her phone, I noticed how quickly her thumb moved to cover the screen if I walked by. When she answered a call, she'd turn away, lower her voice, or walk into another room. Before, I would have dismissed it as politeness or a desire for privacy. Now it felt like evasion. I started noticing the little things. Her phone, which used to be left on the kitchen counter while she showered, or on the nightstand while she got ready in the morning, was now her constant companion. She took it to the bathroom, to the laundry room, even when she just went out to get the mail. It was always in her hand, her pocket, or charging right next to her. She used to complain about being tied to her devices. Now she seemed fused to one. The excuses continued. Work stress, catching up with friends on social media. Just saw something funny online. But the tone was different now. Less open, more clipped, as if daring me to question her. I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to voice the suspicion that clawed at me. What if I was wrong? What if my own insecurity was twisting innocent actions into something sinister? The thought made me feel monstrous, questioning the woman I had built a life with for 12 years. One evening, about a week after the On My Way incident, Sarah announced she had to work late. "Big presentation next week," she said without looking up from her laptop. Her voice was flat, almost rehearsed. "I might not be home until after you've gone to bed." I nodded, feigning understanding, but a new detail pricked at me. She was already dressed in her work-late outfit, a crisp blouse and tailored pants, not the usual casual clothes she wore for an evening at home. It was 6 p.m. She was getting ready to leave. She kissed me goodbye, a quick, dry peck on the cheek. I noticed a subtle scent on her, something light and floral, different from her usual perfume. It wasn't strong, almost imperceptible but distinct. She had changed her perfume? Or was it someone else's scent? My mind immediately went to the worst possible conclusion, then tried to pull back, arguing that people change perfumes all the time. But the timing, the work-late excuse, the new scent, it all coalesced into a suffocating cloud of doubt. I spent the evening alone, the silence of the house amplified by her absence. I tried to watch TV, read a book, anything to distract myself, but my gaze kept drifting to the clock. 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m. She wasn't answering her phone. I tried once, telling myself I was just checking in. It went straight to voicemail. At midnight, I gave up and went to bed, the unused side of the mattress, a cold, empty expanse. I woke up briefly around 3 a.m. The bathroom light was on. Then I heard the soft click of her bedroom door closing. She was back. I pretended to be asleep. The next morning, she was unusually upbeat, almost overly cheerful. "Sorry I was so late," she said, pouring herself coffee. "That presentation is going to be a killer, but I think we nailed it." She looked refreshed, despite the late night. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. Too flawless for someone who just pulled an all-nighter at the office, I thought. She had been gone for 9 hours. Did she go home and shower before coming back? Or did she shower somewhere else? "Everything all right?" she asked, catching my gaze. Her smile was bright, a little too bright. "Yeah, just tired," I mumbled, avoiding her eyes. I didn't want her to see the suspicion etched on my face. Or worse, the fear. I started doing things I never thought I would do. I checked her car's mileage against my own rough estimate of her commute, but it was too difficult to be accurate without a starting point. I looked for receipts in her purse when she left it unattended, but found nothing out of the ordinary, just coffee shop tabs and grocery store slips. I felt like a detective, a bad one, and a horrible husband. This wasn't me. This wasn't us. But the Sarah beside me, The one who was increasingly distant, guarded, and secretive wasn't the Sarah I married. The phone, though, remained her fortress. I never saw it unlocked. It was always face down or tucked away. I tried subtle questions. "Who's that new person on your team you mentioned?" hoping to trick her into revealing the name I'd seen. She just shrugged. "Oh, just a few new hires, nothing major." The evasiveness was a brick wall. The smile continued, sometimes a slight upturn of the lips as she scrolled, sometimes a full, radiant, private joy I hadn't witnessed, directed at me and forever. It was like she was living a second life, one conducted entirely through that screen, and I was merely a bystander. One evening, as we sat watching TV, or rather, I was watching TV and she was intermittently checking her phone, she accidentally left it on the coffee table when she went to get a drink. It was only for a second, but it was enough. The screen was dark, but a notification popped up just then. Not a text, but a calendar reminder. It flashed for a brief moment before disappearing, but it was enough. Dinner with JM, 7 p.m. JM, the initials. Could it be the same person? The same name I'd glimpsed? My heart hammered in my chest. I felt a surge of panic, then a cold, quiet determination. This wasn't work. This wasn't social media. This was a scheduled dinner with JM. And she hadn't mentioned it to me. She was still in the kitchen, her back to me. I had a split second. My hand hovered over the phone, my fingers tingling with the urge to pick it up, to find out more. But then I heard her footsteps approaching. I pulled my hand back, adrenaline coursing through me. She returned, picked up her phone, and sat down as if nothing had happened, completely oblivious to the earthquake that had just rumbled through my world. The calendar notification was gone, but the initials, JM, burned themselves into my memory, another piece of a puzzle I was terrified to complete. The initials, JM, burned in my mind, a fresh wound. I watched Sarah return to the kitchen, oblivious, and then the quiet determination from before started to curdle into something colder, more desperate. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a concrete date on a calendar, a name that wasn't mine, and a dinner she hadn't mentioned. The next few days were a blur of forced normalcy. I tried to fish for information, casual questions about her work week, about any upcoming events. "Busy week?" I'd ask, trying to sound genuinely interested. "Anything fun planned?" Her answers were always vague, always deflecting. "Just the usual grind," she'd say, or "Nothing much, maybe catch up on some shows?" The lie tasted bitter in my mouth, but I kept my poker face on. I felt like an actor in my own life, playing a part one hated. As the evening of the dinner with JM approached, Sarah's mood shifted subtly. She was a little more upbeat, a little more distant. She spent longer getting ready, picking out an outfit I hadn't seen her wear in a while. A stylish dress, not her typical office attire. "Big meeting?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light, even as my stomach churned. She paused, adjusting an earring. "Just dinner with a client," she replied, not quite meeting my eyes. "It's important. Building rapport." The word client felt thin, like tissue paper. She left just before 7, her usual parting kiss, a little too quick, a little too superficial. The moment the door clicked shut, the silence in the apartment felt deafening. I stood in the living room, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, my mind racing. Should I follow her? The thought was ugly, humiliating, but part of me, the terrified, betrayed part, screamed for action. I pictured myself trailing her car, becoming some pathetic caricature. I couldn't do it. Not yet. Instead, I walked over to the window, watching her car pull out of the driveway. I noted the time. Then, I found her spare car keys. She sometimes left them on a hook by the door. I walked out to the garage, checked the odometer reading on her car, and quickly snapped a photo with my phone. It was a small thing, a desperate measure, but it made me feel like I was doing something. Back inside, I sent her a casual text. "Hope dinner goes well. Let me know when you're heading home." I knew it was a test, a way to track her, and I hated myself for it. The hours that followed were agonizing. Every shadow, every distant car sound had me on edge. I tried to distract myself, watch TV, read a book, but my eyes kept drifting to the clock. Her text reply finally came at 11:30 p.m. "Just leaving now." Long one, but productive. The words were hollow, ringing with a falseness I could almost taste. I checked my phone for the odometer photo. It wouldn't tell me where she went, but it would confirm if she'd driven further than a simple local dinner. She returned home around 12:15 a.m. She seemed tired, but also carried a faint, almost imperceptible air of contentment, a quiet glow I hadn't seen in a long time. It was the same subtle scent again, not her usual perfume. Something lighter, almost floral, mixed with something I couldn't quite place. She brushed past me with a quick, "I'm exhausted, honey," and headed straight for the bedroom. She didn't offer any details about the client dinner, and I didn't press. I couldn't bring myself to. The air between us was thick with unspoken truths. The next morning, I crept out to the garage and checked her car's odometer again. The number was higher than I expected. Too high for a dinner at the usual places she frequented for work. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was significant enough to suggest a drive, perhaps out of town, or a longer journey than she'd implied. My heart sank. The evidence was piling up, each piece a shard of glass in my gut. I felt monstrous, a detective in my own home, but the alternative was far worse, living in a blissful ignorance that felt more like a slow death. I knew I needed more. The calendar entry, the text, the late nights, the car mileage, the scent. They were all circumstantial. I needed something concrete, something that tied it all together. My mind went to our joint accounts. I'd always trusted her implicitly, never felt the need to scrutinize our finances. Now, that trust was shattered. It felt dirty, invasive, but the fear was a driving force. I waited until she left for work, then logged into our shared bank account online. My fingers trembled as I navigated through the statements. I filtered by date, focusing on the last 6 to 8 months, the period when things had started to change. At first, it was mostly their usual expenses. Then, I saw them. Recurring charges from a high-end restaurant I didn't recognize, located in a neighboring town. Not just once, but several times, usually on the evenings of her late nights. There were also a few charges from a small, boutique gift shop in the same area. A knot tightened in my stomach. And then I found it. A charge from a florist, dated 2 weeks prior, for a substantial amount. I remembered her coming home that night, saying she'd been swamped, exhausted. She hadn't brought home any flowers. Who were they for? Was it JM? The restaurant, the gift shop, the florist. They painted a picture, a story of dates and gifts, a world I wasn't a part of. The patterns were undeniable, but the identity of JM still eluded me. I needed the name, the face, the confirmation. I started looking for any mention of JM in our home. I went through her work bag, carefully, swiftly, when she was in the shower. Nothing. Her purse. Nothing. My eyes scanned her office space in our home. I knew her work was demanding, and she often left her laptop open, sometimes just minimizing windows. This was a violation, I knew, but I was past caring about violating her privacy. My privacy, my peace of mind, had already been violated. One evening, Sarah had a last-minute video call, and she left her work laptop on the kitchen counter, lid open, while she went to grab something from the fridge. My heart leaped. This was my chance. I casually walked over, pretending to get a glass of water. From the corner of my eye, I glanced at the screen. It was her company's internal communication platform, a Slack-like application they used. Her private messages were open. I saw a chat window with a name I immediately recognized from the calendar entry, JM. My breath hitched. My eyes darted to the last few messages. They weren't formal work communications. "Had a great time tonight, Sarah. Still smiling," J.M. had written. And Sarah's reply, just moments before she'd left the laptop. "Me too, Jay. Thanks for everything. See you Wednesday?" My vision blurred. Wednesday? Another dinner? My world tilted. The name, the subtle affection, the planning of another secret rendezvous. It was all there, laid bare on the screen. The silent phone smile finally had a name. And it wasn't mine. The world didn't tilt back. It stayed off kilter, a landscape of betrayal and disbelief. I backed away from the laptop, my heart hammering against my ribs. The casualness of their exchange, the future plans. It was a punch to the gut. All the little pieces I'd collected, the whispers of doubt, the gnawing anxiety, suddenly coalesced into an undeniable, horrifying truth. There was no going back from this. I found myself pacing the quiet living room, the silence amplifying the thumping in my ears. Every shared memory, every inside joke, every promise we'd made seemed to shatter around me. 12 years. 8 years married. And it was all a lie, or at least a carefully constructed illusion for the past several months. Sarah's excuses, her distance, her guarded phone. It wasn't work stress. It was another man. She returned home a little after midnight, her usual client dinner time. She moved through the house with a practiced quietness, probably assuming I was asleep. I heard the soft click of the front door, the rustle of her coat, her keys dropping into the bowl by the door. I waited, hidden in the dim light of the living room, until she started down the hall toward the bedroom. "Sarah," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, surprising even myself. She stopped dead, her shoulders tensed. She slowly turned, her eyes adjusting to the low light. Her face was a mask of practiced neutrality, but I saw the flicker of surprise, then something akin to fear, in her eyes. "Oh, hey," she said, her voice a little too bright. "Couldn't sleep?" I didn't answer directly. I just looked at her, letting the silence stretch, letting the weight of everything hang in the air between us. She shifted uncomfortably, clutching her handbag tighter. The faint scent of her perfume, mixed with something else, a new, unfamiliar sweetness, wafted towards me. It was the same floral scent I'd noticed the other night. "Where have you been, Sarah?" I asked, still in that low, controlled tone. She bristled slightly. "I told you, client dinner, with the team." "No, you didn't," I corrected her gently. "You told me you had a client dinner. You didn't mention it was with J.M. or that it would last until midnight. Or that you'd be planning another secret date for Wednesday." Her face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking stark under the dim hallway light. She swallowed hard, her gaze darting around the room, anywhere but at me. "What are you talking about?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The practiced mask was cracking. "I saw the Slack messages, Sarah," I said, my voice still steady, betraying none of the turmoil raging inside me. "On your laptop, just now." "Had a great time tonight, Sarah," still smiling, and your reply, "Me too, Jay. Thanks for everything. See you Wednesday?" I paused, letting the words sink in. "Do you want me to print them out for you? Or the credit card statements? The charges from the high-end restaurant, the boutique gift shop, the florist, all in Cranbrook. Quite a drive for a local client dinner, wouldn't you say?" She stood there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. Her bag slipped from her grasp and hit the hardwood floor with a soft thud. Her eyes finally met mine, and I saw a flash of something I hadn't seen in months: vulnerability. But it was quickly replaced by resignation. "It's not what you think," she said, the classic line, and it sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Isn't it?" I asked, my voice finally cracking a little. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think. It looks like you're having an affair." She closed her eyes briefly, a tear escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. It started innocently," she murmured, her voice laced with a strange mix of regret and defensiveness. "He's a client. We just clicked." He understood the pressure I was under. And that justified lying to me, sneaking around, all the silent phone smiles, the late nights, the guarded conversations. The dam was breaking. My composure was failing. The pain was too sharp, too immediate. Do you know how I've felt for months? Like I was going crazy. Like I was losing you, but I didn't know why. I blamed myself. I thought I wasn't enough. I thought it was my fault. Intimacy died between us. That's one died. She opened her eyes, brimming with tears. "I know. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "But it did," I countered, my voice regaining some of its steel. "And you kept doing it, again and again. You chose this. You chose him. Over me. Over us." "It's not that simple," she pleaded, taking a tentative step towards me. "No?" I took a step back, maintaining the distance. "Tell me how it's complicated, Sarah. Tell me how my wife, meeting another man in a different town, showering him with attention, receiving gifts, and planning secret rendezvous while lying to my face, isn't simple infidelity." She recoiled, the full weight of my words hitting her. She sank onto the bottom step of the stairs, burying her face in her hands. Her sobs were quiet at first, then grew, filling the silent house with the sound of a broken heart. Or maybe two broken hearts. I just stood there, watching her, feeling nothing but a profound emptiness. There was no anger, not really, just a bone-deep sadness, a sense of loss that felt physical. The man who had been terrified of finding this truth now faced it, and it was worse than any nightmare I had conjured. The monster I had become in my pursuit of answers felt small and irrelevant compared to the monster that had devoured our marriage. "Who is J.M.?" I asked finally, my voice flat again. She lifted her head, her face blotchy and tear-stained. "His name is Jeremy. He's a new regional director at one of our bigger accounts." "And what exactly is your relationship with Jeremy?" I pressed, needing the words, even though I already knew the answer. She hesitated, then mumbled, We were seeing each other. We were. It was escalating." "Escalating," I repeated, the word tasting bitter. So, the silent phone smile wasn't social media or work stress. It was Jeremy. "All those nights, you were talking to him." She nodded, unable to speak, fresh tears streaming down her face. I looked around our home, the home we had built together, filled with memories and dreams that now felt tainted. The thought of sharing this space with her, knowing what I knew, was unbearable. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. There was no path forward from here, no bridge to cross this chasm of betrayal. "I can't do this, Sarah," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I can't. Not after this." She looked up, her eyes wide with a desperate plea. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I can't stay here tonight," I clarified, picking up my car keys from the table. "And I don't think I can stay here ever again, not with you. This is over." Her face crumbled completely, her sobs turning into gasps. But my decision felt cold, hard, and utterly final. The man who had once loved her, cherished her, and fought for her, was gone, replaced by a shell of a man who just wanted to escape the suffocating weight of her lies. I walked out the front door and into the cool night air, leaving Sarah and her silent phone smile, and everything that came with it, behind. The house lights went out behind me, plunging our shared life into darkness. The space between us was no longer just the width of a bed. It was an unbridgeable canyon, carved out by secrets and betrayal, lit only by the ghost of a smile on a phone screen.